And welcome to School Psychology with Dominique. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my personal, unique perspective on the pros and cons of the job. I have my top 8 pros and my top 8 cons that we're going to go over. So, one of the first pros about this job is that you get to work with children. And if you have a niche of kids that you like to work with, like for example, you like to work with preschoolers or high schoolers, elementary school students or middle school students, this is definitely the job for you because you can find your niche and stick to it. Or if you like to work with all kids, then you have the flexibility of working in these different settings. One of the cons of the job is the politics. I'm not into politics, so this is not my favorite thing about the job, but sometimes we find ourselves in a position where we have a sticky case and administrators will get involved and they have a certain perspective of how the case should be handled. So sometimes you just have to roll with the flow. Another pro to this job is that we get to advocate for kids. Kids are amazing and they have voices, but their voices aren't always heard. And sometimes kids just don't know how to help themselves. So as a school psychologist, we have that unique ability to be able to be their advocate for anything regarding social emotional, behavior, or academic skills. Another con to the job is that it can be long hours. Though the hours of the school time are locked in at their certain times, like 8 to 2:30 or 8 to 3 or whatever it is, and our job has similar locked times, we find ourselves in meetings. We have reports to write, and the reports can be taken home. So sometimes if we leave the job, we come home and we're still working because we're doing reports at home. It's not a habit that I recommend you get into, but sometimes it's kind of how the job rolls out. Another pro to the job is that it does have flexible hours. So even though you might be taking work home, you don't have a locked-in lunchtime, or you don't have students that you have to be with during a certain time of the day. So if there is an activity, for example, if you have children, then you can go to your kids' school and do that activity and then run right back, and the job is flexible in that way. You might have those reports to take home to write because you didn't do it at work in that moment, but as long as you're organized and you meet deadlines, the job can be flexible in that way. Another con to the job is that it's kind of a thankless job. Sometimes you'll get a thank you, sometimes you'll get a realization later from a parent or a faculty member or things like that, that what you were recommending or what you were doing did have a positive impact on the student. But a lot of people don't really understand what we do and don't understand the commitment and time consuming aspects of our job. So they don't understand what our work is, so they don't know how to be thankful for us. But those of us that really understand special education, that see us working hard every day, they do appreciate us. So you might not get a thank you every day, but you are appreciated. Another pro of the job is something that I enjoy about it is that it's unique every day. Your job can be different every single day. So if you like structure and you like things to be the same, or you like to be able to have a schedule for the day and follow it out, this might not be the job for you. Many times I write down my little to-dos for the day and I have a plan, and then there's a kid who's acting out somewhere on campus, and because of our flexible time, we're usually the ones that get pulled in for that, and because of our expertise as well. So that's why I've learned to try to not keep reports until the last minute, because you might not be able to do it that day because something else might be happening that you need to address in the moment. But it does keep the job fascinating, so you never really get bored. Another con of the job is the amount of paperwork. They don't tell you this in school. They teach you how to write the reports, they show you how to do them, they show you how to make sure you have important things in there, but they never really explain to you how long those reports can be and how many you're going to have to do. So that is one of the cons to the job, but once you get a template going and you get used to the tests that you're working with and you understand it better, it does go by faster. But depending on the district you work for, I mean, I've had reports that have been up to 120 some odd pages. But those were tough cases. Those dealt with lawyers. Those had almost every team member involved, the special ed teacher, occupational therapist, speech pathologist. So in total, it becomes really long. But our part is usually one of the longest parts of the report. Another pro to the job, on the other hand, is that you do get to collaborate with others. If you work in a clinical setting, you don't typically have a huge team with you discussing one specific child. Where in the school setting, you get to collaborate with the teacher, the general education teacher, the special education teacher, and then whoever else may be on the team. Speech pathologists happen to be on teams often, occupational therapists, other professional, like ERMs, we call them ERMs, educational specialist counselors, autism program managers. I mean, the team is huge. It can be huge depending on the child. And the more eyes you have on the kid and the more people that understand the child, the easier it is for us to really understand the child as a whole. And I really enjoy that aspect of the job. Another con to the job is that because we get to wear many hats. So we could do lots of things in the job, supporting general education as well as special education students. We have knowledge of interventions for learning, for social emotional, and for behavior. And I really love to get into the classroom and support those kids, especially the behavior kids, early on, so that if they don't have a learning disorder, then we help them right away in the general education setting so that they don't end up looking like a special education child. Where like people think that they need services, when in reality, all they needed was that little bit extra support in the general education setting. But the con of the job is that because of all the deadlines we need to meet with reports, we might not always have the ability time-wise to get into those classrooms and to support those students in that way. Another pro to the job, on the other hand, is that if you don't like to be micromanaged, in most districts, this is a good job for you. If you have a type A personality, which you do need for this job, where you're able to organize your time and make sure that you're meeting those deadlines, and you're able to, and you're like, if you're struggling with time, you're okay with taking work home and making it work from there, then you're not really micromanaged. People just want to make sure that things are getting done, that everyone is happy, that the students are being supportive, and that we're not ending up in situations where lawyers have to be called all the time. So as long as you can do all those things independently, then you're fine. A con to the job is that you do often have to advocate for yourself. So if you don't have that type of personality where you're okay advocating for yourself, you might find yourself having an office space that's in a broom closet, or that you share with multiple other people. I've almost every time I've had to go to a new building, I've had to advocate for my own office space. I'm still currently in a situation where I don't have my own office space at one place, but I'm still working on it. It's just there actually isn't space in that building. But you can tell from the get-go, like as soon as you get into the school that you're working at, how valued special ed is by all the special ed team members, like what kind of office space that they have. And if you're finding yourself in a position where the space is not appropriate for testing, or doesn't have confidentiality abilities, then it's something that you're going to need to advocate for yourself with the school principal, but in a way that definitely is respectful and that definitely continues to keep that relationship strong. Another pro of the job is that I really love that I get to show the child's strengths. A lot of times when we're talking about referring a child for special education, a lot of negatives constantly keep coming up, like, oh, the child can't do this, the child can't do that. But then I like to always ask teachers and parents, what are their strengths? And you will be shocked. There are times where they can't give you an answer, and it's like, there must be a strength. Once you start testing the child, then you really do get to understand their weaknesses and as well as their strengths. And I love presenting this part to the team to show them, like, okay, they might have this area of weakness, but these are their strengths, and this is how we can support them and help them maximize on their strengths while also helping them with their weaknesses. Another con of the job is that it might be difficult to work with some people. So not everyone is just like going to understand what we're saying, or definitely agreeing like with what we're doing and recommending. So there are times where there might be difficult people that we have to work with. It could be an administrator, it could be a principal, it could be a school staff member, like a teacher, it could be a parent. And so there are just times where we just have to pull it all in and just let the data speak for itself, and really make sure that, like, the only way to get around that is to continue to collaborate and build those relationships, because we work with so many people, everyone's not going to be easy to work with. So it's just something that we have to learn how to work around. And like, usually, as long as we're presenting clean data, it always comes around. So just be patient. And then my 8th pro is the vacations. I mean, this is a job where you get built-in breaks, which is really nice, because there are times where just like, when is the madness going to stop? And it does. It gives you a mental break where you could just like regroup and re-energize yourself and come back and really support those kids with a good attitude and good mind strength. I don't know how people do it. I don't know if you have people with regular jobs that don't have built-in vacations just have that mental capacity to just keep going. I need to know when my breaks are coming. I've learned that about myself, and this job just has those breaks like built into it. But one of my last con is that sometimes you do have to give parents difficult news. Sometimes teachers bring a child to the referral process, and parents don't have any idea that there is a concern. And then we find out there's major concerns, but the parents didn't see it as a concern. Like, for example, if like there are times we have to tell parents, your child has intellectual disability, which means that they have a very low IQ, and that can be hard for parents to hear. But you have to know your parents. You have to understand where they're coming from and how they're going to handle it. If you have a big group coming to a meeting and you're going to tell a parent some difficult news that you know they're not ready to hear, you might want to call them ahead of time and give them a heads up so that they can have a more intimate conversation with you. Before COVID, we can bring them in and have a one-on-one conversation with them. But now, with Zoom or Google Meet or anything like that, we can still try to have those intimate conversations with them. Or as a team, before we come to the team meeting, I always like to collaborate with the team and be like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. Like, what do you have? What do you know? And make sure that we're all ready to support the parent with whatever concerns or with whatever emotions come out in that moment. Other times it might be the flip side. They think their kid definitely needs special education, but when we do testing, we find out there's not a disorder. There might be a lack of motivation, or there might be a lack of previous academic background, and then we're having to tell the parent, like, okay, or actually the hardest ones to tell them are what we call the shady 80s, where their IQs within the 80s and their academics within the 80s, so they're running below average on everything. So because there's not that severe discrepancy, they don't meet eligibility. And it's like, okay, we know your child's struggling. We know that they have a disability of some sort that's not allowing them to get straight A's, for example, but because it doesn't meet eligibility, they don't qualify for special education services. And those ones, I feel like, are actually harder than all the others, because you see that there's a weakness, but you can't, it's very hard for them to understand why they just can't get those extra services, but we're bound to the law. So overall, I have to say I really enjoy this job. I love this job. I love that I have access to children, and I can help all children, whether they're in general education or special education. Yes, my time does get committed to the children who need special education support, but I love to help all kids. And this is a place where we have access to them. When you're in a clinical setting, which I do have my background in a clinical psychology, I do have a master's degree in that. When I thought I wanted to work with kids, I didn't want them to have to come to me by their parents bringing them or by a court order and things like that. I wanted to be able to access all of them, because there are some kids who need the help and support, but their parents don't bring them in for help. They don't think that they need that level of support. So I love that we have access to all of them, and that we can help educate team members and parents and everybody about like the best way to support their child. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you have any questions or any comments or would like me to talk about anything specific to school psychology or anything like that, please let me know in the comments. See you later. Bye.